Welcome back to a new session, children. In this video we are going to begin with a new lesson in microeconomics, that is chapter 2. The name of the chapter is Consumer Demand and Equilibrium. Now you all have learned in the first chapter that the act of production and consumption are the two major economic activities which can give income to a country or which generates income of a country. So the next two chapters of microeconomics, chapter 2 and chapter 3, we will be learning these two acts, that is consumption and production. The concept of production and consumption will be learned as the next two chapters in microeconomics. So we will start with the act of consumption first, and that is chapter 2. The name of the chapter is Consumer Demand and Equilibrium. Now in order to learn the chapter in detail, you need to understand certain terms. Now let us see who is a consumer, what is meant by consumption, what makes a consumer to consume, what is meant by the satisfaction of the consumer, what is equilibrium, etc. Now we will move on to the chapter. Now we all are consumers. We are using an endless number of products in our daily life. So we all are consumers. So what is that? What is the meaning of consumption? When we use something, it is known as consumption. So what is consumption? The act of using something which gives satisfaction to us is known as consumption. So what is consumption? The act of using up goods and services. The process of using goods and services is known as consumption. Now I told you we all use different numbers of products in our daily life. So we all are consumers. So the act of using the goods and services, I told you in economics we use the term goods and services because where there is a flow of good, there is a flow of service too. So the act of using of the goods and services is known as consumption. So we all are consumers because we are using so many products in our daily life. Now who is a consumer? That is the next topic that you have to learn. We all are consumers because we use goods and services. But how we define a consumer? One who takes decision about buying of goods and services. When we buy goods and services, we take decision, isn't it? We will not simply buy a good and service. We will take decision on buying the goods and services. Whatever we need only we will buy. So we will take a decision on what to buy, which brand you have to buy regarding all those aspects. So a person who takes decision regarding the buying of goods and services for the satisfaction of his wants is called a consumer. We do buy the goods and services for the satisfaction of wants. Now we will not buy the goods and services if it is not satisfying our wants. So the satisfaction of our want is very, very important. So we buy the goods and services to satisfy the want. So a consumer is a person who takes decision regarding the buying of goods and services. For what? For satisfying his want is called a consumer. Now the consumer decision can be based on two aspects. Point number one, a consumer can take decision by his own. There are certain products, there are certain times in which a consumer takes a decision by his own, his independent decision. Now decisions taken by as a member of a family. So he is a member of a family. We all come from a family. So as a member of a family, we take decision on what has to be bought. So a consumer can act in two ways. He can take decision by his own and he can take decision as a member of his family. So a person who takes decision by his own as well as a member of family on buying the goods and services to satisfy his wants is known as a consumer. So when you write the definition of a consumer, how will you write it in a definition form? A person who takes decision by his own at the same time as a member of a family for buying the goods and services to satisfy his want is called consumer. So once again I am telling, who is a consumer? A consumer is a person who takes decision by his own and as a member of a family on buying the goods and services to satisfy the wants is known as a consumer. So we have learned about the concept of consumption as well as consumer. So what is the consumption? The act of using goods and services is known as consumption. So in that way we all are consumers. Now how will we define a consumer? A consumer is a person who takes decision by his own as well as a member of a family on buying the goods and services to satisfy the want is called consumer. So the satisfaction of want is very, very important. Now we will move on to the next one. A family unit. I told you a consumer also takes decision as a member of a family. So a family unit in economics is called household. So you all are a member of household. So every family unit in economics is termed as household. So you all belong to a household. So as a member of a family here means as a member of household. That is a term which we use in economics for family unit of family. Now we explained two terms, one is consumption and the other one is consumer. Next we will explain the term rational consumer. Who is a rational consumer? We all are consumers that we know, but who is a rational consumer? A rational consumer is a consumer who maximizes his utility or satisfaction by spending his income on goods and services. We all belong to a household. We spend our income on buying the goods and services for satisfaction of want. That is a consumer. But who is a rational consumer? A rational consumer always try to maximize his satisfaction. The point maximization is the one which differentiates a consumer from a rational consumer. So what is a rational consumer? What is meant by rational consumer, or who is a rational consumer? A person who spends his income on goods and services to maximize his satisfaction is called a rational consumer. For example, if your parents are giving a mobile phone for you, now you don't prefer for an entry level phone, you will always prefer for the one which has got all the facilities, right? So that can maximize your satisfaction. If it is an entry level phone and if it does not have any facilities, you will not get that satisfaction. Your want or satisfaction will be maximized if all the facilities are there, isn't it? That is known as a rational consumer. So that person becomes a rational consumer when he is able to maximize his satisfaction. He needs the maximum satisfaction. So that kind of a consumer is known as a rational consumer. We all are rational consumers. We all want to get maximum satisfaction from the purchase of goods and services from the income. Now, consumer behavior. Next term that we have to learn is consumer behavior. So far we have learned about the terms consumption, then consumer, rational consumer, and the next one we are going to learn is consumer behavior. Now I told you a consumer is a person who buys goods and services with his income, but how he behaves, how he is buying the goods and services, how he behaves in the market, how he is taking decisions. Okay, let us see. A consumer takes decision on the basis of, very important, preference, income and the price prevailing in the market. If you are a consumer, your decisions will be based on your preference. You all have certain preferences for the product. For a particular product, you will have preferences. For the toilet soap that you are using, for the toothpaste that you are using, you will be having preferences. For the costumes that you are wearing, you will have preferences. So you will be buying the goods and services according to your preference. Now, preference is not the only factor that matters. Income. You should have income to spend on the goods that you prefer. Along with that, price of the product also plays a very important role, because only if the price is being displayed, you will be able to know whether you can buy that product or not. So your buying pattern or your consumption pattern or your decision on buying a good depends on three factors, which are preference, income and price of the product. Just think about that. When you go to a shop, you will consider all these things, right? In your daily life, you can experience the same in your daily life. If you are going to a shop to buy a particular product, first is your preference, then income and the price. You can experience the same in your life. Now, so a consumer takes decision on the basis of preference, income and price prevailing in the market. Now, you have seen preference, income and price prevailing in the market. So on the basis of that, we can divide the consumer into two aspects. Consumer behavior can be divided into two aspects. There are two aspects of consumer behavior. What is a consumer behavior? A consumer takes decision on the basis of preference, income and price prevailing in the market. That is known as consumer behavior. Now we can divide the consumer behavior in two aspects. There are two aspects of consumer behavior. Which are the two aspects of consumer behavior? Let us see that. On what basis the consumer is allocating the income between different goods and services? I told you, consumer will be taking decision on the basis of preference, income and the price. Now, with that we can study the two aspects of consumer behavior. Now, on what basis the consumer is allocating the limited income between different goods and services? On what basis he is allocating his limited income? Only limited income. You have learned the problem of scarcity in the first chapter. Now, there I gave an example for you where you are going to a shop to buy a mobile phone with a limited amount of resource, money with you, limited income. That is being pointed out here, isn't it? So, on what basis the consumer is taking decision to spend his limited income between different goods and services? Now, for example, if I am going to a shop to buy grocery with a particular amount of money, I have to buy all the products which I am using at home. With that limited income, how can I allocate that particular income, limited income, to buy different products? I need to satisfy the wants of my husband, I need to satisfy the wants of my children, I need to satisfy my wants, isn't it? So how am I going to allocate my limited income for buying different products? That is very important. With a limited income, with a limited amount of income, if there was more amount of income, I could buy any number of products which I wish to buy, isn't it? But there is a restriction here, limited income. So how my limited income can be allocated to buy different products? That is known as, that is what is discussed under the topic consumer equilibrium. So from the name of the chapter is consumer equilibrium and demand. Consumer equilibrium and demand. So this chapter will be learned in two parts. One is consumer equilibrium and the other one is demand. So the chapter will be learned in two sections. One consumer equilibrium and the other one demand. So consumer equilibrium is mainly associated with how an individual or a consumer is taking decision on spending his limited income among different goods and services. Just as I told you, now if I am going to a grocery shop with a limited amount of income, I need to buy different things to satisfy the wants of all the family members. because you know who is a consumer. A consumer is a person who takes decision by his own as well as a member of the family, isn't it? So how can I allocate this limited income to satisfy the wants? That is learned under consumer equilibrium, the first section of this chapter. Now the next important factor, what is the reaction of the consumer to a change in the price? You are very particular about the price, isn't it? Now based on that price you may change your preference also. Just remember the example which I have given in the first chapter. You are going to a shop to buy a mobile. Actually you wanted to buy the mobile worth 20,000, but you have only 15,000. So you are changing your preference from a mobile of 20,000 to a mobile worth 15,000. So based on the price you are changing your preference because of your limited income. So the second part of the chapter, that is demand, consumer equilibrium and demand. The demand will be learned under this particular area. What is that? What is the reaction of the consumer to a change in the price? If a price is high, consumer will demand less, but if a price is less, consumer demand will be more. Inverse relationship. That will be learned as the next section of the chapter, which is known as the law of demand. So the two important areas that we are going to learn in this chapter is consumer equilibrium and demand. This is based on consumer behavior, how a consumer's decision is based on preference, income and price of the product. Now we'll move on to the next one. The two aspects, the one which we have discussed now, consumer equilibrium and law of demand. The two aspects are studied under the two approaches. Now we are going to learn the theories given by different economists. Now the name Alfred Marshall is very familiar to you, and we have got another economist, J.R. Hicks. So the two aspects of consumer behavior will be learned with the help of two approaches. Now let us see the two approaches. Which are they? The first approach is marginal utility analysis by Alfred Marshall, based on cardinal utility concept of cardinal utility. So Alfred Marshall has explained the consumer behavior with the help of marginal utility analysis based on cardinal utility concept. So the concept of consumer behavior or consumer equilibrium is explained by Marshall. There are different economists who have explained the consumer equilibrium, but as class 11 students, your syllabus is limited only to two economists. One is Alfred Marshall and one is J.R. Hicks. You need to learn only the two theories propounded by one with the J.R. Hicks and the other one Alfred Marshall. So here marginal utility analysis by Alfred Marshall based on cardinal utility is the first theory that you are going to learn, the theory of consumer equilibrium. So consumer equilibrium theory, which is framed out by Marshall and J.R. Hicks, you will be learning, and the theory which is propounded by Alfred Marshall is known by the name marginal utility analysis. Now this marginal utility analysis he has explained by using the concept known as cardinal utility concept. Now the next theory that you have to learn is by J.R. Hicks. The name of his theory is indifference curve analysis. The name of the theory is indifference curve analysis, propounded by the economist J.R. Hicks, and his theory is based on ordinal utility approach or ordinal utility concept. Ordinal utility concept. So two theories of consumer equilibrium. Two theories of consumer equilibrium we are going to learn. One is propounded by Alfred Marshall. The name of his theory is marginal utility analysis, and the theory he has framed out by using the concept cardinal utility. The second theory of consumer equilibrium you are going to learn is propounded by J.R. Hicks. The name of his theory is indifference curve analysis, and he has framed out the theory by using ordinal utility concept. Now we will begin with the Marshallian utility approach. Before moving on to Marshallian utility approach, you need to know what is this difference between cardinal utility and ordinal utility, because two economists have used different concepts of utility. Alfred Marshall has used cardinal utility concept and J.R. Hicks has used ordinal utility concept. Now let us see what is this cardinal utility concept and ordinal utility concept. Cardinal versus ordinal. Now before moving on to the cardinal utility concept and ordinal utility concept, let us simply define a consumer equilibrium. Now I told you consumer takes decision on the basis of three things. They are preference, income and price of the product. Now when I take a decision to buy a product on the basis of my preference, on the basis of the income and on the basis of the price of product, I will buy that particular product. The product is with me. After that, I do not want to change that consumption pattern. There I have reached the maximum satisfaction. I have used my limited income on the basis of the preference, and by seeing the price of the product, I have purchased that particular product. After that, I am not ready to change that consumption pattern. I am in a state of maximum satisfaction. That state of maximum satisfaction where I do not prefer to change from that consumption pattern is known as consumer equilibrium. So I am in equilibrium if I am able to maximize my satisfaction with the limited income by allocating my limited income to different goods and services, and from that I do not wish to change the consumption pattern. This is known as consumer equilibrium. Now let us see how do we define, or how do we simply define a consumer equilibrium. Consumer equilibrium is based on the fact that consumer allocates his income among various commodities in such a way that he gets maximum satisfaction out of it, and he does not wish to change from this consumption pattern, because he is getting maximum satisfaction with his existing consumption pattern, how he has consumed that based on preference, income, price, etc., and he does not want to change that from that consumption pattern. Therefore we can say he is in equilibrium. So consumer equilibrium means a position where consumer is in maximum satisfaction by allocating his income to different goods and services, and he does not wish to change from that consumption pattern. Now we will move on to the theories of Alfred Marshall and J.R. Hicks. So before moving on to the theory of J.R. Hicks and Alfred Marshall, let us see the concept that they have used. One is cardinal and the other one is ordinal utility. Now here cardinal utility is used by Alfred Marshall, whereas ordinal utility is used by J.R. Hicks for explaining his theories, these theories. So let us see what is cardinal concept used by Alfred Marshall. Now what is cardinal utility? Cardinal utility is based on the measurement of utility in utils. It is a measuring rod. Utils. In those days, economists in order to explain the theory, they have used the concept of utils. Utils means it is a measuring rod. What is meant by this utils? So cardinal utility means the utility which is measured on the basis of utils. What is this utils? The satisfaction level is measured in utils. Let us see with an example. 1 cup of ice cream gives me 20 utils. 1 chocolate will give me 5 utils. What did you understand from that? Here the maximum satisfaction I have derived by consuming 1 cup of ice cream, because it is very clear from that, because 1 cup of ice cream will give me 20 utils. 1 chocolate will give me only 5 utils. Now you may ask me how we are measuring it in the form of 20 utils or 5 utils. From the satisfaction level, when after having a 1 cup of ice cream, the smile which is coming out of my face, that is more than enough to measure utils. So that is what is known as cardinal utility. So cardinal utility means the utility which is measured in the form of utils. 1 cup of ice cream will give you 20 utils and 1 chocolate will give you 5 utils. So which gives maximum satisfaction for you? 1 cup of ice cream. That means the person is deriving at a maximum satisfaction with 1 cup of ice cream. That kind of a measurement of satisfaction. Here we are measuring the satisfaction of a person, and he is a rational consumer because he has maximum satisfaction by consuming 1 cup of ice cream. That is known as cardinal utility. Utility which is measured in the form of utils, and it depends on it depends from person to person. Suppose another person may not get satisfaction by consuming ice cream. He may be in favor of chocolate. So it depends on the people. But as far as I am concerned, I will get maximum satisfaction if I have 1 cup of ice cream. That is what I have written here. If 1 cup of ice cream is giving 20 utils and if 1 chocolate is giving 5 utils, maximum satisfaction is derived from ice cream. So here utility is measured on the basis of utils. That is measured in the form of utils. I told you the smile on my face is more than enough to measure that satisfaction. So I am getting 20 utils. Okay. Now the next is ordinal utility. You know, ordinal utility is supported by J.R. Hicks. What is this ordinal utility? It is based on the assumption that the utility can be ranked. The utility can be ranked. Here, this example itself we can find 20 and 5, which will have the first rank, 20 utils. Another example which I can give you for ordinal utility, if there are 10 baskets of fruits kept in front of me, and 1 basket with mango, full of mango, 1 basket with full of grapes, 1 basket with full of pineapple, 1 basket with full of banana, and so on. I will prefer for 1 basket of pineapple because I like pineapple very much. That means my first rank goes to pineapple. So that is how a consumer ranks his preference. The second basket I will prefer mango. So the consumer preferring, or he is ranking his preference. That ranking system is known as ordinal utility. So the two concepts of utility, cardinal and ordinal, in which cardinal utility concept is used by Alfred Marshall to explain his theory, and ordinal utility concept is used by J.R. Hicks to explain this theory. So with this we will move on to the next session, the consumer equilibrium theory of Alfred Marshall, after that J.R. Hicks. I hope the introductory part is very clear to you. Thank you.